Hey everyone. Today we'll continue with what we call language death, right? Also on week 11. So it sounds very terrifying. Previously we were learning about language loss. So now we look at language death. Right. So what is language death? Languages that are no longer spoken anywhere, according to Holmes, and one that has no native speakers left. So not only you have lost the language, now the language is dead. Okay, so that differs between what differs between language death and language loss is that in language loss there may still be speakers, but many of them are slowly losing their ability to speak the language. But language death in this case means that they're totally gone, gone forever. No more speakers left of that language. Okay, so language shift has occurred totally. Community has previously that has spoken one language has now started speaking another language, entirely shifted. Or because of genocide, disease, and natural disasters, so wipe out the whole population that speaks one particular language. Usually this happens to what we call indigenous languages. So this is one example. So these native speakers and cultural reasons as well, they avoid speaking certain languages. So in the end, because of the compulsory education in Spanish, increasing urbanization, so they have lost this language called Apani, Ayapaniko. Okay, and there are many other examples as well in different parts of the world. So ancient Greek as well. So they used to use Socrates, Plato, Aristotle used to use it as a dialect, and then ancient Egyptian, and nowadays it's considered extinct. No other speakers actually. So what happens when a language dies? So some people lose their mother tongue, of course, because they're no longer able to learn it. There are no known speakers, and nobody knows or speak the language anymore. So not only that, the planet's histories, cultures, literatures, or even way of life, way of thinking are all gone as well, together with the language, right? So some of the vast local resources are also gone because most of these are indigenous people's languages, right? So these are the references. Let's move on to factors contributing to language shift. So these are the factors. Some of these I've mentioned already. Second language becomes more important to get jobs. No efforts in maintaining the languages. Second language becomes more important because that language contributes to the success of the people, of the citizens, demographic shifts from rural to urban areas, and then the population size also has an impact on this population. It increases or decreases, and then as well as the attitudes and values towards certain languages, and that impacts on whether they want to learn a certain language and forgo other languages. Status of certain languages internationally also has an impact on this. Okay, and there's something what we call language shame. So all these are very clear cut. Usually in terms of English, one is very important, and then they say, well, maybe we should just learn English and forgo other languages, right? So English dominated is very clear cut. Sometimes bilingualism is necessary, but in the end, it results in language shift. But that doesn't always happen because sometimes language shift does not happen. So bilingualism becomes very stable, so no problem. Okay, so what about political factor? And we can look at the case of Israel. So when you want to establish a so-called nation state, whether you like it or not, whether you agree or you recognize this country, whether that is the case, whatever it is, they try to recognize Hebrew within this nation state, and they take that above Arabic as the so-called official language. So it's mandatory, and that's where we talk about political factor in this case, right? They prioritize the language, official language, to giving it an official status, okay, in terms of status planning, right? So that says that Hebrew should be above Arabic in this case. Okay, so what about social factor? Well, they say that, well, ethnically, that language is not so important anymore. No efforts within the communities to maintain this language. So migrant minority languages, after some time, they have shifted to monolingual, kind of language. In France, they speak French. In Spain, they speak Spanish. In English-speaking countries, maybe they speak English. And Indonesia, they speak Malay, and so on and so forth. So that happens. So in the end, social factor influences and impacts results in language shift. What about demographics? Of course, rural areas they shift to urban areas. older generation maybe did not pass on to the new generation in terms of the dialects or the ethnic languages that they speak. So in the end, they no longer maintain the languages that they speak, right? But sometimes they still maintain that because they want to feel closer within the community and with one another. So in that sense, maybe language shift doesn't occur, but it's only spoken by a smaller group of people within the community. So if your minority language is highly valued, then language shift is much slower. It wouldn't occur that soon because there are people who still support it and you're still using that dialect, language, or variety. But if there's a strong pressure to stop using your language or your language becomes less and less important, and there are people who try to force you into assimilating into certain language and cultures, then your minority language will die off or will soon be shifted entirely, and language shift in that sense will be complete, and that will be a shame, right? So these are the references, of course. And in this case, now that you're clear about the factors of language shift and you know what language death actually means, and prior to this, you have learned about language loss as well as language shift. So right now, you have completely learned about language maintenance and language shift. And I hope all of this will be able to help you answer the questions in the forum in ODL e-learning platform. I hope you have learned something from this class today. Thank you very much. I hope you find it interesting. See you next time. Bye-bye.